If you've been to Milwaukee, you've likely been on this bridge, the Daniel Hoan Memorial Bridge, a structure that marks the city's skyline for miles. Subtle but functional, it exemplifies the mayor that inspired a city for 24 years of service. A mayor whose accomplishments were groundbreaking for a country yet to go through what the second half of the 20th century had in store for it, all while being openly socialist. This is Heart of a Nation, tracking socialism in the Midwest, and this is the story of Daniel Hoan. He was born in a suburb of Milwaukee called Waukesha. He went to school at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, where he helped organize the Wisconsin Socialist Club, which started with only 4 members. He began his political career in 1910 as city attorney after passing the Wisconsin State Bar exam and moving to Milwaukee. He was first elected mayor in 1916, following in the footsteps of socialist mayor Emil Seidel before him, who served from 1910 to 1912. Hoan's administration spanned multiple decades, finally being unseated in 1940 by Democrat Carl Zeidler, who was a famous singer that founded Milwaukee Summerfest grounds. In his words, the socialists came to power as a result of a mass revolt against the accumulation of intolerable evils brought on by the maladministration of grafting Republican and Democratic politicians. The task which lay before the new administration of the workers was one of gigantic proportions, with cash resources dissipated, with political hangers-on infesting the civil service, with modernized methods needed everywhere. The job ahead was one that could only be accomplished with the display of unselfish, untiring, and sustained efforts over a long period of years. Under the able leadership of Mayor Emil Seidel, our city government sensed the need of long-time planning and set to work in 1910 to lay the foundations not only for a plan to direct our growth and environment, but to give a new meaning to the term city planning. In the light of our experience, it now means a continuous study by all departments of government for the purpose of avoiding mistakes, reforming the internal organization, improving the service, and making the community a better place in which to dwell. Hoan's views on freedom of speech and assembly are well marked through historical documents as well, regularly introducing bills that legalized picketing, while frequently addressing police brutality. He marked that before the socialists came to power in Milwaukee, the police department was used in all large strikes to brutally beat up the workers. Brutality against our city will no longer be tolerated. In Hoan's mayoral career, the city of Milwaukee grew so quickly from 1920 to 1930 that it passed Buffalo to become the 12th biggest city at the time, with only 2 other cities, Detroit and Los Angeles, growing faster. Through this, both the number of new factories and the expansion of old factories in the city were significant compared to other cities at the time. Hoan was also a major supporter of annexing nearby lands to the city of Milwaukee. During his mayoral career, the city increased from 22 to 44 square miles, with corresponding essential public improvements in the new areas. Among other relief measures, one of Hoan's more noted accomplishments was the Garden Homes project, which launched in 1922 to provide inexpensive houses on the outskirts of the city for people of moderate incomes on very convenient terms. A non-profit housing corporation was formed, and this was the first semi-municipal housing project of its kind ever undertaken in this country. Contrary to modern discourse, Hoan did not believe in paying for this or his many other accomplishments, including $6.5 million for public schools, 9 public markets where only one stood, an almost $3 million street lighting system, buying the harbor of Milwaukee, and more by putting the city in debt. Instead, he believed that the modern officially operated city should be on a cash basis. That means that it should receive within any year enough income from taxes, license fees, and other revenues to pay all ordinary operating expenses. To Hoan, it is cowardice for public officials to borrow, thereby multiplying the city's interest expense, when honesty and prudence require the levying of sufficient taxes to meet a given expense. It was for this reason that Hoan also pushed for municipally owned industries as much as possible, using them as a way to bring in income and then using that revenue to bring down the debt of Milwaukee. One he was quite proud of was promoting the harbor as a municipally owned project, especially as the first water-adjacent city in the country to do so. Of course, Hoan wasn't without naysayers. He had a habit of actively responding to the press published about him directly, critiquing the writing point by point. For example, in part of a larger letter written to some press that he'd received, he writes, "Continuing, you say, every remark he made, every jibe he rendered, seemed to be in an endeavor to stir up class hatred and class feeling. This I wish denied. I endeavored to point out the truth, that in the struggles of the working class, neither Republican or Democratic parties had a kindly word for them, that they were financed and expressed the wish of the moneyed interests only, and that they too should become conscious of the fact that the only remedy was to back up their economic organization with political organization of the working people, for the purpose of electing public officials who would see to it that their legal rights were protected, and that such occurrences as happened in Waukegan, which were utterly illegal, would not happen again. As, for instance, the arrest of a citizen of your community and placing him under bonds without any charge being filed against him." His time as mayor ended in 1940, when he was defeated in the Milwaukee mayoral campaign by the Democratic Party's Carl Zeidler, who was famous for singing at his campaign rallies. He also ran unsuccessfully for governor of Wisconsin in 1944 and 1946, and then in 1948 he was unsuccessful in his attempt to once again become the mayor of Milwaukee when he was defeated by the Socialist Party's candidate Frank P. Zeidler, the brother of past mayor Carl Zeidler, who had died in the war efforts. Losing to Carl Zeidler had also marked Daniel Hoan's switch to the Democratic Party at the time. Hoan was glad to keep an active political life, and also kept some correspondence with then-President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was fond of his city planning. Roosevelt writes, "I am reading that fine book of yours, and I wish it might be in the hands of every city official in the country. You have done a fine job, and one of which I am proud. It makes no difference whether you call yourself a Republican, Socialist, Democrat, or Hottentot. The point is, you have contributed greatly both to the theory and practice of local government. Always sincerely, Franklin D. Roosevelt." What is clear about Hoan is that to him, socialism meant prioritizing the needs of a city's communities while keeping the budget on an even keel. This notion is groundbreaking even by today's standards. To run a city, maintain population growth, and make significant strides all while keeping a balanced budget is remarkable. As Milwaukee and the state of Wisconsin at large has seen significant push towards privatization and anti-union sentiments from those in office, the age of Hoan seems like an alternate reality, with only the bridge near the harbor that Hoan loved so much bridging the gap. Thank you so much for watching Heart of a Nation. This is the first of a docuseries produced by Scapi Magazine in Chicago, Illinois, tracking the history of socialism in the Midwest. You can keep up with the series as it develops in multiple ways, including subscribing to us on YouTube or by finding us on Facebook under Scapi Magazine. Scapi Magazine is an arts and politics magazine based out of Chicago, Illinois. You can learn all about it and more local happenings at scapimag.com. We at Scapi Magazine have some additional thank yous to give. The first is to the mayor himself, Daniel Hoan, who kept significant record of his doings and thinkings, which are all stored at the Milwaukee County Historical Society, who both provided an excellent source of resource for Scapi, as well as many of the images shown here. We also sourced from the Wisconsin Historical Society and the nation's Library of Congress, so we extend thanks to them as well. Again, thank you so much for watching Heart of a Nation, and as always, go out and make something.